Can you imagine what it would be like to be not to be connected? I mean properly disconnected. No internet, no Wi-Fi, no phone, no tablet, nothing. To be properly disconnected, no Wi-Fi, no internet, no tablet, no phones, no nothing. Today we're going to look at what that means in the middle of a disaster. What does it mean to be completely disconnected in the middle of a disaster zone, and what does it mean to be connected? The reality is that people in the middle of a disaster, if they cannot communicate their situation out, then we, the people there to assist, we, the humanitarians responding, we cannot call that aid forward. And the food and the water and the shelter and the search and rescue teams cannot get to where it's needed. Because without humanitarian, without communication, without connection, there is no humanitarian response. I'm going to try to show you more about this, and I have my grandparents to help me explain this. I have Rob and Ivan in the back, mocking around with their boxes and then bits and pieces. Wave, boys. They're trying to wave. And I have this text message from Bawana. Bawana is my colleague in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and I cannot begin to tell you how happy I was to receive this SMS back in April this year. Nepal was struck by a 7.9 earthquake. That's massive. A 7.9 earthquake. But this SMS told me that the worst scenario hadn't happened. She was alive, her family was alive. This time the earthquake had struck 80 kilometers northwest of Kathmandu. The worst case scenario that we were planning for was a scenario when 80% of all the buildings in the city of over 1 million people would have been leveled to the ground. Now, luckily, that hadn't happened. But this is what it looked like in some parts further to the northwest. To us, the IT and telecommunications emergency responders, this translates into responding. And me, Oscar, I'm a proud member of the FITTEST team, the fast IT and telecommunications emergency response team based here in Dubai. We've been around for almost 20 years, and we responded to basically any major emergency in the world. Over 100 countries we've been to, anything from El Salvador to Sudan to Syria, from Pakistan to Afghanistan to the Ebola-affected countries in East Africa, West Africa. Here in Dubai, we hold a stock of 500 individual items that are ready to be deployed to any emergency in the world. Anything from solar panels to generators, satellite phones, radios, even a whole cell phone tower. This year alone, we sent out 300 shipments weighing over 120 tons to basically every corner of the world. When we get ready to go into disaster, we always keep two eyes open. One eye on what's immediately in front of you in terms of getting ready. Your kit, your equipment, all the stuff that we need to be able to respond to disaster. And we keep the other eye on the news. When we saw that 24 hours after the earthquake had struck Nepal, that the news stories still rolling were about the 20-plus climbers lost on Mount Everest, and the only pictures we saw, in addition to that, was the very limited damage in the capital, Kathmandu. When we saw that, we knew we were in trouble, because this tells you some very basic things. It tells you, one, that the people in need, the people in the middle of a disaster zone, they don't have that voice. They don't have a connection to the outside world. It tells you that the people there to assist, they are either disconnected or they haven't actually reached to the disaster zone. And it also tells you that the climbers on Mount Everest, they have a lot of fancy communication gear with them. So for us, the emergency responders, this translates into walking, driving, running, flying, riding into that disaster zone. To get the equipment in, to get the tools in, to get that connectivity up again, to connect those people in the worst of places. And in Nepal, this meant getting tons of equipment in through a very congested airport in the capital, to round up our big community of IT and emergency responders from around the world to get these people back on the grid. Within a few weeks, we had connected 1,500 humanitarian workers across 17 locations In Nepal, some of these locations literally on top of mountains. So how do we do this? What is it that we actually do? We make sure that the humanitarian workers, that they have the connection they need to be able to manage an emergency response. That means, one, high-speed internet connectivity, to be able to send emails, Skype, Facebook, YouTube, all the stuff that you do in your offices, but that we do in the middle of a disaster zone or literally in the middle of nowhere. So how does that happen? Well, same thing as here. We try to use the network operators, the internet service providers, the mobile operators to get that connection in. But if they're not available, which is often the case, we use satellite-based connectivity, either through small, very mobile devices, size of a laptop, or like this. This is a VSAT that gives you high-speed connectivity, and this picture is from Philippines during Cyclone Haiyan. We provide the humanitarian workers, we provide them with voice calls, so they can call back and they can communicate with the outside world. We provide them with radio network for short distance communication, but also long distance shortwave radios where there's no other comms available. Okay, but what is this really all about? I mean, my grandparents, who you know well by now, they didn't need Twitter or Facebook to figure out that the family was okay, did they? And as far as I remember, the fire brigade in my hometown in southern Sweden, they didn't use internet to put out fires when I was a kid. But the fact of the matter is their action was based on the same things as we have today. Their actions were based on availability of information and the right information. Today, we have more information, we have better information, and we have faster connections than we've ever had. And that means we have higher responsibility, a bigger responsibility to act. This quote, and I'm not making this up, this quote is from my great-grandmother. This was her comment when she got the first connection in her house to the outside world. There was one of those big radios. She said, there's so many horrible things happening in the world, and I wish we could do something about it. And today we really can. We really can do something about it, and we have that responsibility. I want to take you back a few years. I want to take you back to 2010, which was a bit of a game changer for us and how we connect people in the middle of a disaster zone. I'm sure you remember Haiti 2010 was struck by a devastating earthquake. The international humanitarian community launched a massive response to try to save as many lives as possible. The capital, Port-au-Prince, was to a large extent leveled to the ground, and communications were pretty much gone in most places. Back then, in this context, we, the IT and telecoms responders, we would expect the humanitarian workers that we're serving to understand that it will take us a while to get them back online. And when we eventually get them back online, the connectivity will be limited, maybe limited to some key staff, and sure, the bandwidth will be very narrow. We would expect them to understand that, but they didn't. Not at all. We very soon realized we were facing a completely new reality. I had colleagues coming up to me and asking to send videos or Skype, and I remember one colleague coming and asking why his BlackBerry Messenger was acting up. And this is days after the earthquake. And this is where when we were literally sleeping right next to the runway in Port-au-Prince in tents like this. And I remember sharing a shower with a few hundred other people. So this was not about spoiled UN officials wanting to browse YouTube in the middle of the night. The fact of the matter is that we need that connection to be able to launch, coordinate, and lead an effective humanitarian response. So what did we do after Haiti? What did we do? Well, we had to reinvent ourselves. We had to revise, we had to expand, we had to do more of what we were doing. Today, we deploy high-speed connectivity from day one. And when I say we, I don't mean FITTEST, I don't necessarily mean the United Nations World Food Programme, I mean the community of IT and telecoms responders from around the world. This is UN, NGOs, government partners, and private sector working together. Together, we form the Emergency Telecommunications Cluster, which is a global network of responders working together to provide that life-saving connection in an emergency. So, what does the future in terms of connectivity look like? Well, my hope is that we're going to engage less, that we're going to see less people getting on airplanes flying out of Dubai. My hope is that the infrastructure across the world will be more rigid, will be more able to deal with the situation you will find in a crisis. And I wish that me and my colleagues can stay home with our families more, but that's basically my wish. What we're seeing though, what we're seeing today, is we're seeing that communication and connectivity is an integrated part of the aid. The future is already here. This picture is my colleague Lasse. He's setting up a VSAT dish that will provide high-speed connectivity. But this is inside one of the Ebola treatment units in Guinea in West Africa. That's where he's wearing the white boots for protection there. We will see aid being delivered through connectivity. Already today, the World Food Programme is delivering a third of its aid through cash and through vouchers, and much of this electronically. So the financial power is being transferred directly to the people in need. We will see connectivity going to the most far-to-reach places. We will see rural areas being connected through low-cost connectivity solutions, and maybe we'll see in emergency scenarios, we'll see balloons, we'll see blimps being used to beam down internet through Wi-Fi hotspots. But our success in this future, our success will be measured, I believe, in our ability to reach the people that happen to be in those emergencies that it takes you 10 clicks to find online. Our success in the future will be measured in our ability to reach the people in need in countries like the Central African Republic, like Yemen, like South Sudan. The trend, unfortunately, is not less of humanitarian crises, but more of them, and more complex, and often without a clear end in sight. But are we up for it, Granny? Yes, great Gran, I believe we are. We know more today than we ever did, but we also have more capacity than we ever did before. We have capacity to do this. We have the tools to deal with this. An example of one of these tools is right behind you. See the balloon back there? This is our standard emergency communication solution that we deploy into emergencies all over the world. This was inflated in what, guys? 10 minutes or 15? 10 minutes, well done. This gives you high-speed internet connectivity anywhere in the world within minutes. This is provided by our partner, Emergency Loo. And this is something that we can bring with us. It's small enough to check in on a regular flight flying out of Dubai right into the disaster zone. But with these tools, it's our responsibility. It comes with a responsibility. It comes with the responsibility to ensure that we are the voice for those people who the media haven't seen. It comes with a responsibility to connect these people. And we need you to be part of this. We need you to help us to connect those people. Because we should not take connectivity for granted. Because without connectivity, there is no communication. And without communication, there is no humanitarian aid.